But Sarah, I know, and you told me also that cooperatives are quite reluctant to use the blockchain. What's your reflection on that after hearing what Xavier has said?
Well, there's different aspects. As Xavier said, it's still very new, and for people who are not in the tech or the financial world, this is all kind of very, very, very vague. I'm still trying to get my head around it, for one. Um, and a lot of people, I think, are still reluctant to crypto because a lot of people think it's still very energy consume. How do you say, like, it takes a lot of energy for the use of it, and I just learned not long ago that it's not the case anymore, which is a good point. The second thing is, I think there's also the fear that there's a lot of money laundering and not knowing what the traceability of the money is. And when it comes to, if we go beyond these technical aspects, I think there's also a question of solidarity and how do you, I mean, cooperative world really started as mutual self-help for workers in the, like workers, and most famous cooperatives started to help blue collars that were living in very difficult situations, and they had to rely on themselves for self-help, and they preferred to put money together to create solidarity. And in the end, those basics that came from the cooperative worlds ended up over 100 years later being the basics of our social security systems. And so there's also an idea that that you also have to be part of the world where we are, and you have to pay taxes and social contributions because it's solidarity. We all use roads. We all go to the hospital at one point, unfortunately, but it happens. When we have kids, they go to school. Those are all paid by social contributions and taxation. And sometimes there's a view also that all this crypto world is just about, not having to pay those and invading that. And so I think there's a lot of things to be done by the crypto world to either reassure people that we can do something else or tell them they're right, and then nothing will happen, I'm afraid. But it was funny when I started to meet people from the crypto and DAO world, is that you have a lot of different visions there too. And I think that doesn't help. But you have the same thing in the cooperative world. In the cooperative world, you have co-ops that act just like any capitalistic business. And then you have others who are really, truly, almost charities, the kind of working, even though they're businesses. And I guess that these different views also happen in this digital crypto and DAO world. And maybe for the cooperative world to identify which are the currents or strands that are really in line with the cooperative view could help. So this I think, is one of the biggest thing. And also, but more than anything, it's very technical. It's like, how do I put my hands in it? And I don't know how to do it. And that's what people have in mind. But go ahead.
I think it's actually the main thing, because all the other arguments, they really for me, they come across as coming from a place of fear, because we don't know that technology, we don't know how it works. So it's kind of a bit of scary, right? So whenever we hear an argument that says that this is not the future, it's actually very reassuring. Oh, great, because actually I was scared by it because I have no idea how to use that. So if I can choose, I would rather not change my habits, you mentioned the energy consumption. This is solved already for Ethereum, which is the main blockchain being used for DAOs. And then for the rest, it's just a tool. It's just a tool. It can be like a knife that can be used to cook. It can be used to stab someone in the back. So here's the same. It's like blogging, right? Blogging can be used by the extremist parties, or it can be used by people to share interesting content, to foster more solidarity in the world. So that's why, to me, it's really important to make the distinction and to not judge a technology based on the first people that use it, because that's a trap. Because every time there is a new platform, the first people who get to use it are actually the ones that have been excluded. from the previous one, right? That's why there's been a lot of hackers and dark web, pornography and stuff at the beginning of the internet, right? Or people who were, you know, the MP3s and pirating all of that content on the internet. But of course, you cannot judge and limit the internet to just that use case. It just happened that for those people, the internet was not a vitamin, it was a painkiller. And the world of crypto is no different, right? The first people that use it are the ones for whom it is actually a real painkiller. So indeed, there might be some really bad-intentioned people, but there are also like a lot of really well-intentioned people. That people in Venezuela, in Iran, in Africa, in various countries in Africa, in Argentina, in a lot of those places that don't have a stable currency, or that for whatever reason they cannot, you know, send money to their loved ones who stayed in their home country. For all of those cases, the current financial system and current legal framework that we have, it's just not working for them. So yeah, so this is basically a new paradigm. And my invitation really is not to focus too much on the technology, just a tool, but actually go back to the use case of a cooperative. Because when we heard at the beginning, the definition of it of Sarah, I think it's wonderful. And I want to see more of them. So to me, yet today, it's only 10%, right? And arguably 10% of the population is the number of people who participate in some ways, right? And maybe even not knowingly. I want to see like more than 50% of the people who make a living, right? Working 2, 3, 4 days a week, paid, working not as a slave in wage slavery, with all the burnouts and, you know, and getting more people to consume more and basically polluting more, right? I want most people to make a living working for cooperative, working for the community, working in democratically governed. And so the big question that I have for Sarah is actually, what is for you, and based on your experience, what has been the biggest friction point? And why cooperatives tend to underperform compared to privately owned entities?
That's a very interesting question that the cooperative world continuously asks itself. Different aspects. For example, right now, one of the major challenges for co-ops is to ride the digital wave. It's something that they don't necessarily know well, except for some cooperatives that are born out of the technology, like, I don't know, IT co-ops and stuff like that. But for the rest of the cooperative world, this is very vague. I mean, we're talking about a very diverse world out there, and a lot of really community-based. And so it's really living with their group in the real world, and the IT is just a tool, and unfortunately they're often using Microsoft for their mailing and for their Excels and sheet and documents and so on. But there is a debate that's going on in the cooperative world, is how can we make links with the open source and free world, because they are already developing a lot of things that we need, but based on the principle of cooperation among co-ops, we should be more using cooperative tools or open source, because often, indeed, open source and all that, when they have to choose a legal structure, if they don't use a cooperative, they'll use a nonprofit tool. So this is a great debate that's going on, and how can we take this wave? Because this is data is the new oil, and it's not about using data like the GAFAMs. It's about how can we use the data to be stronger on the market and to be more useful to our community, and how can we propose also an internet that is more democratically governed, because we believe that not only in Europe we have a better legislation that protects more people, but we believe that the cooperative principles could be ideal actually for the digital world. But we kind of lack the capacity to do it. And we are big institutions, and big institutions are as a movement, it's a bit difficult to move. But the conversation is happening. I know it's just a conversation for now, but the reflection is on the table. And another challenge that is linked to that is that you often need quite some investment in IT tools. And the issue for cooperatives is to attract investments, because if you don't have a lot of maneuver to pay back your investors in a capitalistic model, then you don't attract them. And so they're going where the money is. And so they're not coming to the cooperatives. And so I would link that to another major issue, which is the legal frameworks. Our legal frameworks, our taxation and so on, are all based on a capitalistic system where all we can calculate is what you spend, what you earn, the benefits. But we are not taking into account what are the social, environmental costs of the way we are producing whatever we are producing. And as long as we are not counting the externalities, cooperatives and, let's say, more, or structures that are more concerned about environment and society will always be losers compared to companies who are making benefits and making society pay for the externalities, be them social or environmental. And so there's a level playing field to do here, and there's really a lot of lobbying to do so that the actual accountancy, legal, and taxation frames are adapted to the environmental and social challenges of today. It's a huge battle, and it's not ready to be won. But if progressive forces come together, maybe we can do it.